Inside Improv with Stacey Hallal, Joe Bill, Elise Rodriguez, and special guest, Wade Jackson.
Hello, hello. It's Friday. That means it's another episode of Inside Improv. I'm Stacey Hallal. I'm excited to be here with my co-host, Joe Bill. Joe, hi.
Oh, hi, Stacey.
How you doing?
Good to see you. I'm doing all right. It's been a couple weeks, so there's been a lot of stuff that's going on, right?
Yes, just a few things in the world.
Just in my smaller news, because I don't want to, take away from any bombs you're about to drop. But I went to my first festival. I went to a festival in Omaha.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right.
And it was a blast. And I was amazed that I think the good people of Nebraska have eradicated COVID. But the festival organizers nevertheless took precautions. I did 5 great shows, had fun parties. Nobody mocked me for my masks. And I have a negative COVID test. So I think it was successful.
Yay. I'm glad you had a negative COVID test. And was everybody vaccinated? Was that a requirement in Omaha?
Yeah, you had to be vaxxed to perform. You had to be vaxxed to get into the venues. There was one main venue, the Backlime Theater, Dylan Oaks' theater there. And then there was a couple of other theaters that did stuff. I forget the one that Jessica Kent works at. But Jessica Kent does Story Chain. I think you've met her before, so it was like cool to meet her. I got to do a duo with Rachel Ware, so yet another duo partner on the books. And then, have you ever worked with Justin and Kelly from New York? From Justin to Kelly, Kelly to Justin?
No.
For that movie?
No.
Yeah. So they run the Countdown Festival in Tampa, and there's a whole long story about that. Maybe we'll get them on sometime. But like, it's very much their music and their energy as a duo is like unlike anybody else you'll ever see. So Dylan stuck me in with them, and I told them I felt like a stand-up jazz bass player that was about to sit in with They Might Be Giants, and I didn't know how it was going to go.
And how did it go?
Great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it went great.
Good.
Yeah, we found a thing, and that thing worked. So
nice.
As improv goes.
Yes.
And what about you? What have you been up to?
Well, our big news in local news or in Curious News is Curious just we've just started to lease another space.
What?
Which is terrifying and exciting.
In the same
Yep.
complex?
So for people who don't know, Curious has a big space that seats about 170, 180 people. It's cabaret style. And then we have a smaller space that's about 65, 70 seats, a little white box theater in the same building. They're sort of back to back with a hallway in between. And we got a space next to it for our classes because during the pandemic, our previous rental situation is tenuous and we're not sure going to happen again. So, and it's a terrifying time to get an additional space. And yet at the same time, it's available because of the terrible time. So, I mean, we got the theater in 2008. When everything was crashing, and that's why we were able to get into that space. So
yeah.
And the goal is to hopefully we lease the smaller space as well, and so we're hoping to be able to do a fundraiser and buy both those spaces down the line.
Amazing.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It'd be cool.
I don't suppose you choose to be in the business of buying and expanding a theater unless something inside of your brain enjoys being terrified. So I think congratulations.
It's so true. And this is a great segue to bring on our next guest. But And there's no Elise here today, so we send our love to Elise for anybody who's showing up because they want to see and listen to Elise's amazingness. But she's going to be back next time. But yeah, I do often say things I say I'm excited and terrified. Like that's when I know
you're doing it.
That I'm sort of in the place, right, of growth. And it's exciting, but also terrifying. The nice thing about this space is it has like little, really nice work spots, and it was a co-working space. So in the day, we get to use it as offices and not just work on the tables in the theater. And we have somebody renting one of them as a workspace to help offset it. So
love it. Congratulations. That's
amazing.
Thank
you. Yeah, I am losing sleep, so must be good.
Well, I am just going to reach through the camera. I'm going to take some of your terror, and now I will put that inside of me. What are we doing?
Thanks, John Tim. John Tim on tech. So let's bring on our guest that I am very excited about. He's the founder and artistic director of Covert Theatre in Auckland, New Zealand. Yes! Mr. Wade Jackson. Hello, welcome. Nice to see you. I'm going to do my best to keep you and Joe separate and not get confused who's talking.
Yeah. Happens a lot.
Yeah. For people who are just listening and not watching, when Wade came in to the meeting, we were immediately like, okay, Joe's here. And it took us a second to realize, no, it's indeed our guest, Wade. I'm glad I didn't say, I don't know. I was just like, I'm glad I didn't say anything I would just say to Joe, but there's probably nothing I wouldn't also say to you, Wade. So
something really inappropriate. Yeah.
Yes. I was like, I don't think me and Joe's conversations are that exciting that would there be anything terribly inappropriate.
I mean, inappropriate, but not exciting.
No. Well, welcome. We started talking a little bit before we got here on the air. So you are in Auckland, which is in full lockdown right now.
Right now.
Level 4. So not even takeout food, nothing. No one just. So in the U.S., essential workers are considered like takeout food makers are considered essential workers.
Oh, are they?
So, Joe, did Chicago ever stop having takeout food?
I think I think maybe it was only curbside, like you had to go pick it up. But they were delivering groceries. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, it was a thing where you would get groceries delivered and then wear a hazmat suit into the foyer by the front door and then spray everything down, wipe everything down, leave it there.
That's right.
Come back in right. But I'm pretty sure that, I think you're right. I think in Chicago, there's always, once they quickly figured it out. They wanted the restaurants to stay in business and that was the only way.
Yes.
So I think that is what drove it.
Yeah, I think we had a temporary thing. So how long was Auckland locked down the first time?
7 weeks, 7-8 weeks.
So not that long, relative.
Not that long. And then we had another lockdown for like 3 weeks, and then in February we had a 3-day lockdown, and that's been pretty much it. I think this is week 6, so this is almost as long as the original, coming up to the original one. Yeah.
So as soon as one case was detected, everything went back to full lockdown.
The whole country went down to a full lockdown with the Delta variant. And then I think it's sitting up around like 800 cases now. They've tracked most of them. I think there's about 20 rogue cases that they haven't linked to one of the clusters. And so they're just trying to figure out where that comes from before we get let out again, I guess. But the big announcement happens in a couple of days as to when we can, because the rest of the country's in level 2, which means they're just socially distancing. But Auckland is in full lockdown.
Has COVID spread to anywhere outside of Auckland in New Zealand? It hasn't reached the South Island. I don't think they've had any cases in the South Island. But there were a few, 3 or 4 cases in Wellington, hence the full North Island lockdown. Got it. It's amazing. We were just talking about how, a small number of people in a country make its experience entirely different. in being able to track things like this. And there's one of our activities during the winter, John, Tim and I watched all of the Marvel movies in chronological order. And there's the theme of that. Have you watched all of the Marvel films?
All the films, yes. Just watched my first episode of Loki yesterday.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, we got to get up on it. Have you watched WandaVision yet?
No, that's following Loki.
Right. It came out before Loki, but I think, if you're going chronological. But, there's this theme about the world being better if there was half as many people on it.
Yes.
And the evil person is trying to balance the world by making there half as many people. And then they restore it. And then some people are like, it was better when there was only half of us.
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's no good way to get there. But boy.
It's kind of weird when you're rooting for Thanos.
Yeah, it really is. I used to root for people don't even like it when you talk about population control, right? Like they've the Chinese restrictions on how many kids you can have that come up, but it's just like I was worried about us growing too fast, and now I'm worried about us not shrinking faster. So it's dark. I said I was going to keep it light. It got real dark real fast.
Let's go. It's a dark time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so one of the things, Joey, that you mentioned you wanted to talk about was kind of the morale around opening and closing and trying to still navigate a theater. How is it affecting you, Wade, and your community that you see with this constant uncertainty and the back and forth?
I think this lockdown is actually harder psychologically because New Zealand was doing so well. We had a little lockdown. We hadn't even opened the new theatre though. We were supposed to open in March, but we were locked down, and so we didn't open until June. And then at that point, everyone came out, so we had sellout houses right from the word go because everyone was tired of being locked in. But this one here has been tougher, I think, because other countries are starting to open up, and yet we're now in full lockdown. So psychologically, that's tough to take. It's like, what happened to we were doing so well story? It's now up in smoke.
And how are you seeing that play out in players and staff, and what are the effects of that?
Well, the government provides wage subsidies to help pay the staff, so the staff are still getting paid. We only have a small team anyway, but they're all getting looked after. And the players they're just doing some online stuff, and we communicate to them. But really, we're just in a holding pattern. We can't. Fortunately, our spring program, because our season's the opposite, we're going into spring, is was at the printers, but hasn't been printed. So that's good because that's going to have to be amended now. But we're just hoping we can get down to level 2 in the next few weeks.
And at level 2, masks on.
Masks on, 50% house. You can socially distance the seating, and they have a rule about if you go in, because we have a bar, so you have to sit at the table and the service will come to you as opposed to you going up to the bar as the normal practice.
Oh, interesting.
That kind of thing. No groups bigger than 10, and no more than 50 people in one gathering. Okay.
And can people eat and drink? Can they take their mask off to drink?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Masks are mandatory on public transport and when you're going into the supermarket now, but they haven't talked about what the mask rules will be when we're in level 2.
Okay, so that's what we're trying to figure out. That piece we're planning to open October 2nd, and vaccinations required across the board, obviously, but masks, whether or not people feel comfortable with people taking their masks off to eat or drink is kind of the big question for me right now. But we're installing also big air filters that'll cycle through the air in about 10 minutes and remove 99% of any kind of virus, specifically COVID as well. So then I feel less bad. So it depends on when we can get those installed. But then, because if you take your mask off, then it's in the air. It's in the air. So that's the part that's making me wonder. But sorry, go ahead, Wade.
I was just saying, I said one of the members of the theatre performers emailed me yesterday just asking a vaccination is going to be compulsory for the performers and for audience members. Like, do you have to show, do you have to be vaccinated to come in as an audience member? So that's what we're discussing and getting advice on right now.
Our ticketing system has the ability to require a vaccination card to even buy the ticket. and people have to upload
Right.
the vaccination card. And it's pretty strict too, because we had to mend it because it wasn't being inclusive of trans people who maybe have a legal name they're buying the ticket under one name and their vaccination card is on another name because it's their
Right.
legal name. But at least that reflected how strict it is. And so now they went in, they were really responsive and fantastic when somebody brought it up, and now they can type in an explanation of why their name is not the same
Right.
and get through. But the nice thing about that is that we could require advance ticket purchases so that the door staff doesn't have to have that conversation if somebody is being
It's amazing.
difficult. Yes.
Yeah, it's great.
So you kind of get filtered out without having to leave your house. And then, which I think is fair. If somebody didn't see that it's required and they show up, they're going to be more frustrated than if they see it when they're at home making the decision to come, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm interested in so what are your feelings, Wade, and like the staff of the theater, and even just as New Zealanders as a whole, if you care to characterize it, about mandatory vaccines? And, here in the States, it's such a, maybe 2/3 of the people are fine with it and 1/3 of the people are just those people. Are a third of the people everywhere, including New England?
No, we don't have that. We're not. It's not such a hot topic. There'll be some individuals, but I don't think it's going to be en masse like that. We're expecting to have quite a high vaccination rate at the end. Once everyone who can and wants to get it will get it done.
And has your president spoken out or expressed her views about
Our Prime Minister?
Prime Minister? No, sorry, President.
Our Prime
That's
Minister.
even better.
No. She has. I mean, it's just encouraging people. Obviously, there's some people with medical reasons who can't. We did have a death of someone who got vaccinated and died. They already had a complicated health issue. So you hear that news and you go, oh God, it's obviously it's tragic for them and their family, but you're also thinking people will then go, see, I told you, it'll be dangerous. But I think most people are just expecting people to be vaccinated. Yeah.
I have a lovely friend who is afraid to get vaccinated. She grew up in a kind of a Southern California hippie family, and so was very minimally vaccinated as a child and has the ability to stay isolated. And so she was reluctant, and I kept chatting with her as especially as the Delta variant was coming around. And I was like, I'm worried about you because it's going to keep getting worse. And she said, yeah, I keep hearing all these vaccination stories. And I said, oh, can you share some of those with me? And she was like, well, like Eric Clapton. I was like, all right, if you have to pull up Eric Clapton, like, you're not talking about like somebody had an issue or whatever. Like Eric Clapton is the case versus like everyone knows somebody. I think most people in the U.S. know somebody who's been affected by COVID pretty drastically. So it was pretty funny and so I just had to convince her she started to read more stories about long COVID and fewer stories about vaccinations. So, it's like, which thing is more of a threat and which one scares you more is the question, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So for us, I think I agree, like this has been harder. So we opened for in-person classes and rehearsals without masks, and it was like, I missed the June, July window of opening the theater. Everyone was going out. Everyone was pouring out. Everyone was happy. We had this sense of invincibility as everyone got their second vaccination. And I had intentionally skipped that because I was worried about variants. And but then I was like, oh, I missed out on that little window of replenishment. But at the same time, I'm comforting myself by saying, well, at least I know we didn't contribute to any Delta variant spreading. But those classes were great and those rehearsals were great. And now we have masks in rehearsals. And we've readjusted opening from August 21st to August 2nd. But I feel like everybody's just tired. Like there's an energy suck and it's just taking more effort. I think even in your normal life, people talk about like, oh, I had a tired day at work. I wasn't sure I wanted to come to rehearsal. And I was like, oh, just go. You'll feel better. And I'm so glad I did. Right. That's a story you hear a lot. But I think right now that pull not to go and just to stay home is bigger and stronger and harder to fight against, because it was just such a crash to go from like, we're free, to like, oh, no, we're not.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think, one of the joys of improv, right, is it teaches you just to go with what is. So I'm just trying, I get a few emails, stuff like, how you doing? Because, every week you close, it's pretty tough for survival. But I think I'll just stress about it later. I'm not going to stress about it now. That's been great for me.
That speaks to the question that Joe was just bringing up about being the type of person who even gets into running a theater in the first place. So Elise and I were talking about, we both grew up with a lot of chaos in our homes. And so when things are stressy and scary, we get calm. Right. And then we feel our feelings after the crisis moment. And so that sounded a little bit like that when you said, I'll think about it later. Are you somebody who is calm in chaos?
Not necessarily. I would say I'm more like the juggernaut. Once I get going, I won't stop. And so this is just another thing that, this whole global pandemic is another thing that we're going to have to bust through, kind of thing. So that's my attitude to it.
When did you decide you wanted to open your own theater and have your own company?
Well, the first time was in 2000. We did the Chicago Improv Festival, the Improv Bandits, and so I was sitting at the Annoyance Theatre, the old one, and going, oh wow, you can actually have your own improv theatre. Like that wasn't a thing in New Zealand. You just didn't have. There's no such thing as an improv theatre. And so that was in 2000. And then later that year, I did 3 weeks with Keith Johnstone at the Loose Moose, and I saw the volunteer system, how they run the Loose Moose Theatre. People perform for free. They do lighting and teching and the box office, all that kind of stuff is how they used to run it then. I don't know if they still do that now. And then later that year, I was in New York at Gotham City Improv, and went to a tiny little theatre and did some shows at Bank Street Theatre and went to a show in someone's like apartment, and that's where and I was sitting on the subway in New York holding UCB's October 2000 postcard with all the shows and workshops. I said, I know what I'm going to do when I get back. I'm going to open a theatre. And 6 weeks from then, I had the lease on a little venue. We built a 50-seat theatre. I had no money. Went and borrowed other people's money. Built a little theatre. We ran that for 4 years, the lease. And so I was being tired of being the poor, starving artist. Paid all the money back, and then my neighbour, who was a music store, said, "Hey, look, don't sign the next lease. We want your building." And they wrote me a check to bugger off. Because I was going to close it down anyway because it was just too hard at that point in time. And I thought, one day I'll come back. And cut to 15 years later. So we still kept the theatre covert running, but we were just hiring venues for the next 15 years. And then, September 2019, I signed the lease on the venue that we have now. Just went for it. So I think we're probably the only improv theatre opening during the global pandemic. They say that the essence of comedy is timing, and boy, did I nail it!
Yeah,
let's open a venue.
And you waited 15 years just so you could do it right during the pandemic. So
But I also launched a business. I also launched a coaching business during the GFC. So I'm 2 for 2 right now.
Well,
as far as picking my timing.
We opened Curious during the 2008 recession, and it is the reason we were able to get into that space. So, it's interesting. But what I'm curious, because I was very impressed when you just said 6 weeks later you had a space, because it was 10 years for me between deciding that's what verbalizing that's what I wanted and then making it happen. Yeah. What were the things you found so hard about it the first time around?
Well, just the lack of money. There was a joke that if you called the theatre at 3 a.m., Wade would answer the phone. So I was pretty much living there. Mm-hmm. I wasn't married with children then, so it was easier to do that kind of those kind of hours. So it was just really just to get it off the ground. Improv isn't well known here. Stand-up is much more established. So it is a whole education piece around what improv is for that. And Auckland isn't really a city that supports the arts as much. There are other cities around the country that are much more supportive financially. So it was just a big battle to get to let people know that we existed, to have the funds to do marketing. So we had to work smarter rather than smart and hard, because we didn't have the finances. Mm-hmm. And we're just finding the same thing this time around as well. It's just now it's an awareness exercise of getting the name out there. And of course, the name was up for. We had an agency come and do some pro bono work around, because it's like, COVID theatre. Is that what we're saying? COVID?
No.
It's just like,
oh no.
It's just like, my God. So yeah.
I did not think that's where. I thought where you were going is that you're trying to make a theater called covert theater.
Yeah, covert.
More aware and mainstream, but no, it's worse. It's being mixed up with the pandemic during which you have opened. Yeah. Amazing. So, go ahead.
I was going to say the name came from the fact that I thought it was going to be in someone's basement. Like, no one's going to hear of us. It was going to be underground kind of thing. That's where the name came from. But both locations we've had are prime locations, great locations. So we're pretty thrilled.
Yes. So now it's more speaking to the art form that's covert. It's the improv is a covert kind of theater. What happened in that 15 years that, other than forgetting how hard it was the first time, made you feel like you're in a better position this time? If the pandemic weren't here, obviously, what were the things that made you think this time would be different?
Auckland's grown as a city. It's matured. There's a lot more it's become wealthier. There's a lot more people going out and there's much more opportunity for people. That's a big thing. Social media has happened since the last theatre. So as far as advertising and spreading the word and that side of things has happened. We grew the talent base a lot. So the quality of our shows were at a really high level. Before, in the last theatre, we had to have improv bandits who are the more experienced improvisers in kind of littered in every show. Now we have, we've got 90 odd members of the theatre cast. So it's a really high standard, high quality of shows. So all of those things, and to be honest, it's always just been it's all I've ever wanted, is to have my own creative space. This time we've set it up as a registered charity, so we can tap into charitable funds and donations and things like that. That's what's helped us survive, really. So it's much more community owned. So we talk about we're community in spirit, but professional in standards with the theatre. Nice. So that's kind of a lot more. That's a lot more. A lot more positive things. But there's nothing else I want to do, Stacey. It's just to have this space. So it's kind of this is it. Yeah.
Over the course of the past year and a half, there have been times where I've been like, I'll apply for this job or do this. And, and talk to my therapist, like, I'm exhausted. And she's like, yeah, but are you going to stop doing it? Or is it just going to be another thing you're doing? I was like, probably won't stop. It was just a way for me to kind of relieve the theater of having to pay me, is the under it secretly the impetus to do something else, because it's hard when you feel like you have a calling to do a thing. But we say that we're warm and professional are kind of the two words that always come up when we ask people to describe us. I think community, it has to be community based. I think that's why people do improv. It is that connection, right?
Yeah, well, for me, that's the essence of the art form, is connection. I mean, our purpose that we have stated on our website is to enhance human connection through play. That's what we're about. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's lovely. Did you say you have 90 or 19?
96. So, and we've got about 50 odd in the school. So we've got we'll have a graduation ceremony coming up with about another 15 members, which take us over 100. But yeah, so there's almost 100 members.
Great. And you're doing ongoing classes? Are you, when you're not in lockdown, you're doing in-person classes? Did you do online classes as well?
No, we do for the junior. We've got a school kids program as well. So we're running some of those online now for them. But the other ones, we just want to do it in person. And we didn't think it was going to be sick. Well, I suspect it would have been this long when it was the Delta variant, but we're thinking we're hopefully going to be out in a couple of weeks. And so we did it last time. We just waited until we could do it back in person again.
That's right. Your lockdown wasn't that long the first time. So for
Yeah.
us, we ended up building a whole program, which is another kind of bumpy thing about the transition, is that we created this whole online community that sort of ended when we opened back up, and there were teams that have formed, and there were a lot of tears when those connections, because some people were far away, and so they couldn't carry over in the form that they had been to in person, and they had been through so much together. We were really worried about whether people would take online classes and the quality of online classes, but they became really important to a lot of those people as their escape from trying to make it through their day to day. And so they became extremely bonded to each other. And it was really nice. We ended up making about half of what we do from in-person classes, from our online classes. So that was helpful for sure.
Yeah.
So what's your dream? Is to have your live shows, classes, any other activities based out of your theater in the future?
Yeah, I mean, we're about to, the 1st of September, we're about to do what we call the Fun Size Festival. So we put out, it's scripted comedy. So we put out all New Zealand, if you're a Kiwi, and you want to write a short one-act play, send it to us. It hasn't been performed before. Send it to us, and we'll curate it and create it a festival. So we got about over 40 submissions from people all around the country, and we picked 6, and we find the directors and the performers, actors from inside the company. And so they've been rehearsing that, and that was going to be our first scripted piece, and that was going to go on now. So that's been postponed. And so we'll put that back on as well. We're very keen to get sketch. So we're kind of improv agnostic at the theatre. So we'll do short form and long form and narrative form, plays, all that kind of stuff, improvised plays. So we have improv chat shows and improv dating shows, all that kind of stuff going on. So we're all pretty, anything will go, but we're also keen to use it as a breeding ground for talent, really. Yes. So we can have writers coming through, more sketch, get sketch comedy happening in a bigger way in New Zealand. Yeah,
sketch is tough. It's a big resource. It's a time bigger. You can't. People have to have a role, right? They have to know their role. They have to learn their lines, the writing process. If you have any props, you can't have kind of the rotating cast of an improv show.
Yeah, so we did. Actually, I did sketch comedy before I did improv at university. So it's always been a true love of mine. So I'm keen to nurture that and get that happening. Yeah. What's
your favorite? Do you have a sweet spot? Like for me, I think duo improv is probably just where my heart gets the happiest. Do you have I love doing narrative. I love doing Ruby Rocket, right? I have lots of loves, but that is kind of my favoritist. Do you have a favoritist personally?
Favoritist, probably the Improv Bandits, because it was that predated the theatre, and it's who you perform with for me, not so much the what. I love the story. I love the narrative stuff. Because things like short form and long form, they weren't words we used. They're things that we learned going to the States. We just did improv, so we didn't realize there was a difference. I think back to I have a martial art background. That's probably what I was doing when I was living in Japan. I've been doing martial arts longer than improv. And there's a demonstration my martial art instructor did. He'd get people up from different styles. So he'd have like the boxing, the kung fu, the karate, the taekwondo, and he'd blindfold a guy, and he'd get the 6 different styles to punch him in the stomach. You need to prepare and take the hit, and then I'd take the blindfold off and ask them, which style hit you third? Was that a kung fu punch, or was that a karate punch, or was it a Muay Thai kickboxing punch? And he's like, I don't know. You can't tell the difference between the styles. And that was his point. It's like you learn principles for martial arts. Styles are just things that get cultured over the top. And that's kind of my take with improv too, is you learn the principles of improv, then you can do long form and short form and plays and all that kind of stuff, because they're just different ways of enacting out the principles. So favorite forms, not so much. It's who I perform with is what I really enjoy. So, I love it all.
It's really well put, because I think it's a disservice to even call short form, because if you go to a good short form show, it's ours is the longest show we do is our short form show. It's a 90-minute show, whereas our long form shows are usually about 50 minutes. In Lloyd Alquist is the one he's like from MI West Side and Mission Improbable, where he's like, you're in the show the whole time. A lot of times people look at a list, right, of a short form game, and they get in this thing of like, oh, I'm in this game, and this game. And it was Lloyd who really pointed out to me that you have to remind people, like, no, you're in the whole show.
Yes, yeah. I remember watching some of the stuff when we first went to the States and was watching the long form shows and hearing the phrase long form and thinking, I've done word at a time stories longer than some of these scenes. What are they talking about? This is long form, you know.
Yes.
So it was really, it's quite different. But again, they're just their styles rather than the principles. I'm more about teaching the principles.
And to bring it back to the martial, I am too. And I love cross-training. I think we talked about that a lot that first time that we chatted. But if you think about martial arts movies, there's also that thing where one teacher's group goes over to the other teacher's group, and then they pick a fight for which group and learn the best kung fu versus the other. And that reminds me of improv a lot when people start posturing.
Yes. Yeah, I've seen it. As I said, I've seen it before in the martial art world. I don't have time for it there, and certainly don't have time for it in the improv world. When people start talking about this is better than this and this is better than that, it's just kind of like, oh. Man.
Well, my therapist is a mindfulness, comes from a mindfulness place, and she is a Zen Buddhist practitioner, and she's like, that even exists among Zen Buddhists, where you think that would be the last place there should be rivalries about whose Zen is better than whose. Goes back.
My emptiness is so much more empty than yours.
That's right.
I have the best emptiness ever.
Yeah.
Well, and with the house team model, we were starting to get this sense of like a little bit of that even within our own community. So we've switched it up to make sure that we have casts that are still teams that help scheduling, and it helps keep a smaller group together so you really know each other really well. But we're rehearsing partially as a whole before we break into groups, and we're going to schedule shows where players from each group play with each other to make sure that human nature of as soon as you have two groups, they try to decide who's better.
Yes, we have no levels. We have no house teams in our theatre, so we'll have troops inside it, and they can be open auditions and so forth. But we don't have any house teams in that regard. We don't have any levels. So the people who's got 25 years experience can do a show with someone who's got 3 months experience.
And it's
that kind of sets up a
better.
That sets up like a curiosity, like so that's like an objective view of it. But so you said there's 96 members of COVID theater. Yes. So like, what makes a good member? Like what
you have to be active. So we have some things you have to do at least minimum of 20 hours a year of coming to the group workshops where everyone can come to. So we have block workshops, which are limited numbers. Then we have drop-in workshops, which are just open. So you might have 3 people, you might have 30 people. You have to attend a certain amount of those throughout the year. And at the end of the year, we cull too. We'll cull if you're not active. So we don't want to have 200 members, but only really 50 of them are active. We want to have people who are active in the community. So a good community person, someone who's active, come into workshops. We do cater to the hobbyist, hobbyists right through to the professional improviser. So we want to be open in that regard. And one of the things we're thinking about now is actually having non-performing members as well. That might be something that we can have. So people who are there just for the community and the learning of the improv, of the art form, but don't actually want to get up on stage. So we're looking at the moment, we don't have that.
And anything like around, artistic vision or character traits or aptitudes or attitudes or.
Yeah, we have a no dickhead policy, so you're not allowed to be a dickhead. So that's,
I love that. How do you measure? Yeah. How do you measure a dickhead?
Well, we say Well, the line we have, because people come and do the Improv 101, and then we encourage people who only want to get on stage to do 201. And the rules we have, there are 2 rules. 1, you got to be a team player, and 2, you can't be an axe murderer. But we're negotiable on that one. But we're not negotiable. We're not negotiable on the team player one. So yeah, that's the and people just, that's the thing with these the improv exercises and training. You reveal yourself, right? That's why they're such a wonderful tool for self-awareness, because they act like a mirror. They reflect you back at yourself. And if you're the teacher, you can just see the reflection of the other people, and you can see who's going to work well and who isn't going to work well. And we'll take a risk on someone, because it's not about the improv. It's not about the improv abilities at that stage. It's more about their do they work well with others, and that's really if they do, then we'll bring them in and then train them to get to that level. There are certain shows they can't do. There are certain they have to earn their stripes and get the stagecraft and so forth. So, but there are about three or four shows that there's open to all members of the theatre. And then later on, you get into the more complex forms. That's when experience, and you audition for that. But people can also create their own shows in our theatre as well. They can come up and pitch an idea. I've had a number of them. They pitch an idea to me, and we help them make it. We had someone, one of our ones we just had sellout seasons of before the lockdown was one of the members has been in recovery for 12 years and wanted to do a show based on rehab, her experience of living in rehab. And so they spent months. All the dialogue is improvised, but the characters are set. And so they brought people in who run the rehab centres and all that kind of stuff, and it was all cast from the theatre, and it was amazing.
Wow.
But it was obviously a black comedy of life, but really to help destigmatise addiction. And now that's in the process of they're running a TV pilot for it as well. They had a production company come along and keen to look at that, and that's the joy. That's what the theatre is there for, is kind of that breeding ground of that talent, creative talent.
That's brilliant. We had a night where we had a group there of people who were in rehab who came out together, and we didn't know that. And there was a scene that took place in rehab, and like some people knew, I guess, or someone knew, and they started to panic. And later they were like, "That was the best scene!" Like they loved seeing it portrayed, and
yes.
It's awesome. I think it's also a big reason. I don't know if you know the podcast My Favorite Murder. But it's in 6 months it became like Beatles famous. Like they walk in the room, they get a standing ovation with people screaming. It's a combination of true crime, comedy, because they're both really funny and they're a great duo. They're very different from each other, the two women who do it. But also they're both in recovery. And so there's a lot of connection through that, because it is stigmatized and it's not talked about a lot. It's supposed to be a secret, right? And then maybe every 10 years you post something about celebrating that you're 10 years sober, but it's almost everybody is in some kind of recovery or another, I feel like. So when people pitch, is that in the main like weekend slots? Do that some shows during the week?
Try. Yeah, we had a fringe festival, and I suggested to the producer that she put it into that, and so they actually got a main slot. Main time, but we have Friday, Saturday nights are kind of our more experimental formats. So it's a 9 o'clock show. We have a 7:30 show and then a 9 o'clock show on Fridays and Saturdays. So that's where we'll start them off, and if they do really well, we'll move them into a prime time. So we had one of our members did one of the UCB's mockumentary online formats during lockdown, and then he pitched that. He said, "I want to actually make this happen." And it was great. We did it in the late night slot, and we'll probably give that a primetime slot because it was done so well. Yeah,
that's great. So 7:30 for here in Portland. Like it's when I came and made my business plan, I was I had multiple shows every night of the week because I had moved here from Chicago, where Second City sells out an 11 p.m. show like it's nothing. Yeah. And really in Portland, the super viable spots are Friday, Saturday, 7:30. Everything else is tough. Is Auckland similar?
It's the same. So we have a Thursday show, which is basically our kind of a show for all the members can join in. So we mix our newbies with our more experienced improvisers. It's the Thursday show. So it's kind of like, if it was a stand-up comedy bar, it'd be kind of called like open mic night. Yeah. Kind of rookie night. So
we have open court, which is the same. Yep.
Yeah. that's our Thursday show. Yeah, Friday, Saturday is the main show, and then we'll do so there'll be the same show Friday, Saturday, and then the Friday, Saturday late shows will be the same show, and then we'll do we have a family show. We do a kids show on Sunday afternoons, and then we'll do a 6:30 show. In winter, that just died, but this year because it's just cold, no one could go out on a Sunday. But it was because right before lockdown was starting to pick up as it got warmer. So so it's kind of balancing that out with what's financially viable, but also when will people come out, and also and developing people's talent as well.
So if, for example, this rehab show, how long did that run? How big was the cast?
There's about 9-10 in the cast, and it was it was a day in rehab basically was the show. So it was based on what they actually do in a day. And that ran for 2 weeks, I think, and sold out. And then we did a return season just recently, and that also sold out as well. So it ran for Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We actually gave it a Thursday slot.
Okay.
As well,
so they got
during the
six shows
during the Fringe Festival.
Okay.
They got 6 shows. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
And we're going to do a nine for the Fun Size Festival with the scripted comedy. We're going to give them Thursday to Saturday for 3 weeks. So they've got 9 shows, but that's going to change now because we want to get it done this year before the end of the year. But probably more like 6 now. Still figuring it out.
Right. Right. We're speaking in theory versus in reality. Yeah.
Waiting for the Prime Minister to tell us, are we opening in October or September, October, or is it November? We just don't know when we're going to be back open.
What determines it? Is it when the cases start to fall? Do they have to fall?
The cases are falling, so the lockdown is working. We only had like 15 cases in the community, new cases, so it is dropping. So the lockdown's working, but it's just they're really just trying to get our vaccination rates because we started late. They're just trying to get those up, which we're having massive. I think just yesterday was in the news. We just bought some more vaccinations from Spain to keep up with the current demand. So, which is a great problem to have as far as people wanting to get vaccinated.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're just trying to get to a high vaccination rate and they'll let us out, or the cases will actually beat Delta, which is highly unlikely but possible, and then we'll get let out then. Yeah.
So artistically, what, as somebody who performs, and I imagine you direct as well, and also manage the theater, do you perform in shows that you also direct? Do you have any rules around that?
Yeah, I try not. No, I don't really. So I've directed 2 shows recently. That's our film noir show and our science Star Trek homage show, and I didn't perform in those. I find it really hard to direct. To act in shows that you're directing as well, and that's also because I also have a scripted theatre background as well. So that's important. I tried that once and just once only, and never did that again. Learned that lesson. So I'm happy to direct shows and not perform in them. Yeah. But I'm actually not the theatre manager. We've got someone else who runs the theatre, thankfully. I purely look after the workshops and shows and the culture. I kind of see myself, my role is really the culture guardian, making sure that lovely supportive environment that we have is maintained. Yeah.
So when all is good, what is your staff? How many people and what are the roles within your staff?
So I'm the artistic director, and I'm doing an unpaid role. I've got the theatre manager who's paid full-time and bar manager who's part-time, and then a whole bunch of casual staff who do the front of house and help with the bar and all that kind of stuff. A lot of it is, we've still got someone who's a head stage manager who, again, volunteers their time. They're getting paid at one point and they're just like, we want the place to survive. So they decline to take the fees for the shows. So that's kind of it, really. It's a skeleton crew. We have other people who are contractors, like our designers and our accountant and social media person, all that kind of stuff. But they all, and we have a full part-time fundraising, does all the grants for us. But they're all virtual. They're in the office. So it's
and was that pre-COVID? They were just are they all freelance and they just
two of them live out of Auckland. And they're all just freelance contractors who pretty much work from home.
Great, and they're all part-time.
All just contractors, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, but they contracted just a few hours a week, or.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But usually about 10 hours a week, things like that. Most of them. Yeah.
is tough. We're just trying to restructure our, we just restructure everything because we have used this time to go and dig in and try to figure out some other ways to do things. But if we want to grow our corporate side, then we need someone else to do it because I cannot do more than what we're already doing.
So when I left the first theatre in 2005, I was a couple of years before that, I started getting into the more corporate-y stuff. And so that's what I've been doing. That's why I've been able to, my wife and I have put a large chunk of our savings into the theatre to get it up and running ourselves, So, and I've only been able to do that because I spent the last 15 years doing corporate work and just keeping the theatre company just ticking over. So before it was like 0% corporate, 100% professional actor, comedian. So I chose poverty. And then then it started switching into like 95% corporate and 5% live theatre. And I just a few years ago, it's like, just don't. I'm going to go back more to my roots. So now I have a much more healthy balance. It's probably about, I've also been doing the corporate stuff for so long now, I have a reputation that a lot of the work will come to me rather than me have to do business development. So that's great. So I will do mainly it frees me up to work mainly on the theatre and then do the corporate stuff when it comes up. And yeah.
And is it you're not working for a company? You're your own company.
I have my own company. Yeah. So I've written a couple of books and got picked up internationally. So I licensed a few of the products and programs and things like that as well. So we had things like the Singapore Armed Forces doing our program, and David Covey, the son of late Stephen Covey from Seven Habits, he licensed our program into a few different countries, into Japan, my storytelling program into Japan, and our leadership program into Australia and so forth. So, but that was when I was doing global domination, and I decided when I wanted to do more theatre stuff to let all that international stuff go. And so now I'm just really focusing on the local market.
So you help companies tell stories like in marketing?
Yeah, I do. I'm known as a high performance coach. So I use improv, and I also have a health science background. So I have postgrad in drama, but also health science, mind, body health. And I did hypnotherapy for like 10 years. So I combine all of that with my martial art experience in the improv. And I do self-leadership, resilience, I do collaborative creativity and storytelling. So they're kind of the 4 areas that I focus on.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I do conference keynote speaking, but also facilitation and training.
If somebody, you're focusing more locally, but if somebody hearing this wanted to contact you, would you do virtual coaching or
I do. Yeah, I do executive coaching and one-on-one virtual coaching as well with people who, a couple of people who are in New Zealand, yeah.
Great. Yeah. How does somebody, do you have a website where somebody can learn more about your corporate side?
There's 2 websites. There's the coach and the speakers, wadejackson.co. And then it's just, the other one is the company is inspiredlearning.global. That's the one that does all the programs. Yeah.
Amazing. Awesome.
Yeah. So that's what helps fund the theatre.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that really, that's the piece, right? Is that theater, I think in and of itself it's just really hard to pay for a space 24/7, a staff to manage that space and have shows in the times that you can have a show, especially when you're in a city that really only comes out on the weekends. And occasionally, we could have a special guest come to town and sell out a Wednesday, but that special guest is leaving with most of that money because
that's right.
They get paid for having that cachet that they could pull in that crowd. Yeah. So I can't wait till we crack this secret code on how to make it work. I mean, the space I mentioned that we got, we're going to have, it's basically divided in 2. It's a longer rectangle, and there's the cubicles that was a co-working space, and they're nice cubicles. They're not like padded. It's like a low, pretty wood that divides up the space, so it feels really nice. And the other half was, big, huge conference table for people to sit and work. So we took that conference table out, and so it's the workspace in the day and a classroom at night. And then there's a space on the other side of the annex that we're looking at as well. And the people who are in it decided they want to stay, but they're considering renting it to us at night to help offset their costs. And it's like, having something holding the space during the day and keeping it alive and active is the other strategy that I'm looking into. We rent to Oregon Children's Theater, and they use it a lot of the hours that we're not there. It's perfect match, but they're probably going to end up getting their own space again eventually.
Yeah, we hire out during the day to corporates for off-site strategy sessions, all that kind of stuff, because we're a lovely foyer and the theatre space itself. Our seating system is retractable, so it's within a push of a button, within a minute, all the seats just go back. We've got the whole floor space there. So so we're just growing that, renting that out, which is just so the space is constantly being used. So
for that, is it risers that then just retract, or is it?
They concertine into themselves. Yeah.
And then when it's out, is it like benches, or is it still got room?
It's still individual seats, but as they concertine, the seat back pops down and
got it.
Goes back. All the rows go back into each other. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. If you go to our YouTube, you'll see we've got a little 30-second promo video. You'll see about half a second of them going back. Yeah,
I will go watch retractable seating porn is going to be on my agenda for the day.
We had the seating guys come in and video, and I'm like, why are you guys videoing it? You install these all the time. They're like, this is the first type of its kind in New Zealand, because they're actually comfortable seats. Most of those retractable seating ones aren't very comfortable.
That's what my concern was. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, no, these are actually, in fact, we had a reviewer come along and he actually put in there, he goes, and the seats are so comfortable, which you can see as many shows as I do. This is a godsend.
That's awesome. Do they have cup holders for people to have drinks?
No, they don't. No,
okay.
No, they don't have the cup holders. No.
It's New Zealand. This is your cup holder.
Yeah.
Yeah. More like that.
Just,
cup holder, yeah.
Keep it in your hand at all times. Amazing. Yeah, those are not inexpensive. Those retractable.
No, they're not. Yeah, and of course, when they're retracted too, they're in a vulnerable position. You can't climb on them because they're not supported. So when we run school holiday programs and things like that, and you've got those, you've got your, was it $57,500 seating system just vulnerable to kids climbing? You kind of like. Get off those seats. There's the big sign, do not climb on the seats. Needs to be there. Yeah.
I mean, we got movable risers for the annex space so that it could be a flex space. And those were half of the build out. It was, I think $15,000 just for the risers.
Yeah.
And then it was a cheaper build out because we just, did the floor and painted it otherwise. And had some lights and built a grid, but those risers.
I was going to say that was something that I wasn't quite prepared for. Was when I did the first theatre back in 2001, and now doing it in where I started 2019. The cost of consents. I think we spent just as much on council legal fees and things, and getting the engineer's report and the structures engineer's report and the airflow engineer's report, and all the building was so much more expensive, not necessarily because of the materials, but all the red tape that you have to go through. It just wasn't. I think back now, I was like, was the first building even legal? I mean, it was just like we had none of those.
So Will Luera just popped in and says hello, and he says he never forgets dancing to techno at about 4 a.m. at the Chicago Improv Festival you referred to earlier.
Oh, yes.
Will Luera. The man who somehow never sleeps, Will Luera, travels the world, goes places across the planet for a day, and then flies to another place. Nice to have you here, Will. I hope you're tasting things, Will. I've been enjoying, I don't know if you've been seeing his stories where he's been trying to get his taste back from COVID.
Yeah.
He had a breakthrough COVID case. He lives in Florida, so.
Yes.
Yeah,
I had a chat with Will. Yeah, I had a chat with Will about going back into running the theatre. We had a conversation around why am I doing this again? That kind of conversation.
Yeah.
Get all the tips and pointers again, because it's like, it's 15 years in between rodeos. Yeah.
Yep. And he says he's at about 25% taste recovery. Whew. Yeah, my brother had that as well, and it's slowly coming back. Will Luera, while you're there, he also weighed for us when we opened our theater. Like, I had he was at Improv Boston still at that time, and we had a huge, long conversation, and he helped me talk about he helped me think about board and fundraising strategies and all of that.
He's brilliant. Knows what he's doing.
He sure does.
And I'm curious, Wade, like in New Zealand, what does diversity, equity, and inclusion issues look like in business and theater? Like, how does that? What's the lay of the land there?
Yeah, it's a big topic. We actually had through my corporate connections, I knew someone in that space, so we just brought them in and made it a free workshop for everybody around the rainbow diversity. So people could become aware, just to raise people's awareness of it, really. So it is a big topic. We don't have at the theatre. We have our policy, and again, I brought in corporate contacts and my corporate connections to make sure that we had a rock solid members handbook around our harassment policies and all that kind of stuff. So that it's a real safe environment for people. So we have, in the theatre we have a big rainbow flag hanging down there. We have members in that community in the theatre. It's just really trying to make it as safe as we can for everybody. It's a big part, but it's in the corporate world as well. It's a big movement around trying to make environments more accepting of others.
How diverse is Auckland as a city?
It's one of the. It's more diverse than London apparently now. It's one of the tops in the top 4, top 5 as far as ethnic diversity.
Wow.
It's one of the biggest. It's one of the biggest in the world now. Yeah, which is great for the restaurants. You have good food. Yeah. So
that's what I was amazed. I went to Sydney for a corporate job, and I was amazed because I didn't realize how much Southeast Asian influence there was, and the food was. I just ate Indian food for lunch every single day. What is the ethnic mix that's making up that diversity there?
Well, we've got. I remember this is going back a year or so when it came out in the news, but I think it was like number 4th in the world. It had just overtaken London as being more diverse by number of ethnicities in the latest census poll. But we've got. I mean, I live where I live. It's just around. If I walk 100 meters, I'm surrounded by Indian cuisine. It's called Little India basically. So we have in the theatre we've got must be about 15, 16, 17 different ethnicities from all around the world.
Amazing.
So it is. One thing that we don't have a lot of, and that we're looking at building relationships with, is a lot of Indigenous, so Maori improvisers. Yeah, so that's something that we're working on behind the scenes to kind of build those relationships with, to get more Indigenous people in the theatre as well. Yeah.
Do you have a sense of? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Joe. No, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm super curious about. Do you have a sense of what improvisation is in the Maori culture, or are there awareness of it, or?
There's probably they have a lot of things called kapa haka. Which, have you ever seen the New Zealand rugby team start?
Oh yeah.
So you know what a haka is. So they have a lot of song and dance in there, and they're an oral. And as a people, their history has always been passed down orally. So there's a lot of storytelling. So same with the Pacifica, Samoan and Auckland has actually have more Samoans than Samoa does. So we're it's a big Pacifica community, Maori Pacifica community in Auckland especially, and so it's about just making sure that those pathways, because we're relatively with a new venue, at least we've been around for 20 years as a brand, but the venue is new, so it's about making sure that they're aware that we're here, that the opportunities are there as well. We've brought in scholarships for starting at a young for kids as well, for disadvantaged kids. We've got some funding to bring in kids who wouldn't normally be able to afford an improv workshop, and so that's really important to us as well. So we don't want to be just where we're located is a great location. We don't want to be just that environment. We want to be able to reach the wider Auckland as well. So they have a lot of performance in their culture, but not necessarily improvisation. Yeah.
I told Wade this when he first came on. Joe, have you seen The Piano?
The movie?
Mm-hmm.
Jane Campion movie, yeah.
Don't
worry, Joe. I haven't either.
It's terrible. I mean, people loved it and were going crazy, and there were lines from it, and I walked out of it. But one of the scenes had a shadow puppet scene, and the Maori people flipped out, like they didn't understand what a play is, and I just was like, I felt like it was just so racist. I got so angry. So
I have to find out. I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that movie, so I can't really comment.
People have been doing shadow plays since like cave times. Like it's right. And some of the cave drawings were specifically like almost animation. Anyway, it just was so insulting. And this is before, people were thinking about that kind of stuff. It just seems so obviously insulting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I have friends in South Africa, and in my time in South Africa, like the idea is what happens if you can just put like a multi-ethnic group together? And that's a country with, 16 or 12 or whatever it is, official languages. Like, what would it look like? What would improvisation look like if you brought all these people together? And then what is the harmony of that then equal, and how do you make that accessible without it being some white sensibility preach lesson or something? But it's fascinating to me. It's to me, I'm curious about what's a type of improvisation that like honors different cultures, but then also as part of the program presents a harmony of like what does this program look together in a piece? What is this?
Well, Matthias, Joe. So
Matthias is great.
So he did a World Comedy League where we had China versus Spain versus New Zealand versus America we had people from all around the improv community from all the different countries coming together in a fun format. But it was
and he's from Spain, right?
He's Argentinian.
Argentinian?
Yep. So it was great to have that. It was great to have that, and people who weren't members of the theatre were performing in that as well. And so you'd have people who are performing purely in Mandarin, and just people just loving it, loving the show, even though not understanding what actually is being said.
100%. I love it. I remember at Chicago Improv Festival, there was like a Dutch show that just totally in Dutch, and I didn't understand a word of it, the language, but I totally got every piece of the show. It's at least enough for me to feel completely satisfied watching it. I'm smelling a grant opportunity, Joe, because now that you've put it out there, I really want to see what we could make with people from all over the world, for sure.
Yeah, I gotta say, one of the most moving improv experiences I had was just in like a maestro heat at Improvention in Canberra in Australia, where you're just playing with different people, and there was a group. Oh God, it's not Thailand. It's not Singapore. Well, South Pacific Asian country, and there's a woman who spoke no English. I speak no, Mandarin or anything. And somehow we're in this scene, and it's sort of a longer scene where she's a princess that's been held captive, and she's going to try to escape. I have no idea what specifically is being said, but based on the performance, I got what was going on. And then I played a tree by a prison wall. And so she was going to try to climb the tree, and then I lifted her up, and people were just gasping, and I slowly just lifted her up, and somehow we just knew. And then she escaped, and everybody cried. And I'm like, that's what I'm chasing before I die.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There was I met a bunch of Seattle people who've been my friends forever now since this one festival that Andrew McMaster's coordinated, and it was a regional improv festival in the Pacific Northwest, and people came and gathered, and he had people do like a short version of whatever they do, but we traded a person. So I got to play in an Unexpected Productions format with mostly Unexpected Productions people doing it. And Lindsay played with All Jane, in our format. And so everybody got to have this taste of being the new person in somebody else's experience and approach and style. And that was a great premise that would be fun to do with groups of different diversities and nationalities. I think that would be super fun.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we've been talking over an hour already, so I guess we can wrap it up. Before we go, I do have to thank you both for making me look tan.
You're welcome.
which isn't something I ever thought I would look.
Bringing the Middle Eastern out of you. Thank you.
We're tan. We're just moon tanned. That's all. Just know this, Stacey. If you go to Asia, white is better. The paler you are, it means you stayed out of the sun.
Right.
I'm just living in the wrong country. That's all.
Yeah. Very, very pale. And I grew up with everybody dark skinned, so I always wanted their dark skin because everybody else looked like Arabs in my family. So thank you both for making me feel like I look like an Arab. All right. Well, thank you so much, Wade. Before we go, anything else you want to share? Anything people should look out for from you, by you?
Well, hopefully, when the if we ever get to travel again, we would love to people just to make contact. We've got a lovely little theatre. We'd love to see both of you, but everyone watching, and come to New Zealand and bring the improv love.
I can't wait. It's high on my list, Wade. I would love to meet you in person.
Would
Get
look
to see
good
you.
over there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Wade Jackson, Joe
Cool.
Bill.
Thank you.
It's Inside
Cheers.
Improv. Thanks everyone. Have a great
Stacey.
weekend.